Hey everyone, welcome to the video. I'm Nancy Chauhan, DevRel Engineer at LocalStack. In this video, we are going to talk about the new feature of LocalStack, which is IAM Policy Stream. And for that, today we have Daniel, who is working on this feature. So Daniel, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Daniel. I'm mostly working on the IAM parts of LocalStack and including that also our new policy generation feature. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. So, when we build an application, usually we require access to AWS resources such as S3 bucket, RDS, database, etc. Now, to provide access to these, we create IAM roles and we attach permissions to it in the form of policies. Now, figuring out this policy can be very cumbersome, and sometimes we give over permissions to it. So hence LocalStack came up with this new feature, which is IAM Policy Stream that eases out this job for you. These streams can help you find the appropriate permissions for your cloud applications and offer you a chance to see logical errors in your application. So Daniel, I just gave a brief introduction about what the live policy stream is, but I would like to ask you the motivation behind building this feature.
When you on AWS, when you learn a new service, or even when working with services you're already familiar with, you often have to first of all look up which permissions certain actions require, and you have to make sure that that you don't grant too many permissions, and you have to make sure to grant the right permissions, of course. Especially when AWS makes services which are makes requests which are not directly visible to you. For example, when you have an SNS topic, as we can see later, and an SQS queue, and you have subscription here. And if this call behind the scenes fail when the SNS topic publishes a message to the SQS queue, you won't get any error message. You will actually get nothing at all and just no messages received. And this can be confusing, especially if you're not too familiar with the services or starting to learn on using serverless services on AWS. And this is why we came here and built a feature which basically takes part of the burden from the developer and which basically generates the policies for you and shows you which policies are required for certain calls. So you can take them and set them to your resources, to your roles, to your whatever users, and can just use them and go ahead doing what you can do best, developing your app.
Yeah, it can also be a very good way of learning something new, helping them with onboarding. So, Daniel, can you just show us some demo in which we are building something and we are generating the policies?
Yes, I'm happy to. So, as I already mentioned briefly, we have a very simple demo stack here. We have our SNS topic, which is called test topic here, and we have an SQS queue, our test queue, and we have subscription. So, and if you publish a message to SNS via this subscription, we will push the message into the SQS queue. The whole thing will run on LocalStack with IAM enforcement enabled. So we can take a look on the common pitfall I already mentioned and how LocalStack will help you basically circumvent it or define the correct permissions for this interaction. So on the right, on my left side here, I'll have a terminal where I'll just create all my resources and create the subscription and then publish messages. And on the right side, we can see our new IAM policy stream UI in the LocalStack web application, which will, or where you can see in the output for our for the requests we perform against LocalStack, the appropriately generated permissions for the specific requests. So to start up with our stack, we will just create a SNS topic here on my left side with a name. It's called test topic. And we can already see requests flowing in our IAM policy stream. And if you look at this more closely here, we can already say that here you have an identity-based policy attached in this case to root, because on my left-hand terminal I am basically recognized by LocalStack as the root user here. Of course, in a real AWS, you would have the user you're just using to work here, or the role. And we can see already the permission generated for this SNS create topic call with the resource on which it will basically create, and the effect is allow, because we wanted to do it, right? I'll just minimize this one here, and now I can start creating a queue. It's called test queue, and again on the right side we will see our request and also the permission which could be then attached to it. Next, we want to create our subscription, and for this because it's quite verbose, I'll just copy over the command here, and we can see the topic aren't specified, protocol is SQS, and the notification endpoint is the just created test queue. And also this call succeeds and everything works fine, right? And now, without any further permissions, I just say I will publish an message to my SNS topic, and we'll see what happens. I also copy that here, just normal publishing. And then we can use SQS to receive the message from our test queue here. And there is no message. We can try it again, maybe it takes a while, but no, there will be no message. The reason behind this is that we did not allow the SNS service to publish a message into our SQS queue. And this is something now our policy stream feature can help us with. We can see here that we have SQS send message calls, and these calls are actually done by the SNS service. And if we can see here the request parameters, but our more interesting thing is here we have a resource-based policy, and basically LocalStack suggests you that for the that we attach this policy here to the resource specified here, which is our test queue. So what I'm going to do is I'll just copy the whole policy out here. I will create a policy.json in my terminal. I'll paste it in here just for convenience, write it, then I will let JQ encode and escape this policy string, because that's what needed for the AWS CLI and for the policy here. We set as an attribute in SQS queue, and we have our beautifully escaped string here. And now I already prepared some SQS attributes, Q attributes JSON, and here I can just paste the policy which has been generated automatically. And now I will use the set Q attributes command to our QUL to set the attributes we just specified in the SQ attributes JSON file we just saw, which takes a second, right? Now it's finished. And now we can send another message here, and we can check if we now receive the message, and we did. So here is the message, where you can see here our some event test message. And you can also see here on my right side that we got basically for all of the API operations we did, we got the appropriate policies generated, and the request params are specified here as well.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for the demo. It's amazing. I mean, we can generate the policies. It's an amazing way of, I think, learning. And also this will help us avoiding the IAM over permissions issue that a lot of organizations face. So I have one question, Daniel, that from the demo I can see that every API call generates a new policy. Now suppose my application requires access to S3, RDS, SQS. So how can we generate one policy for all these together?
We also thought of that, and here we have also a new feature which we call summary policy, which basically concatenates the policies per principle which the policy should be attached to. And here, for example, for all our setup and send message and everything policies, we have here the identity policy attached to the root user, because again, I worked as a root user for this demo, which basically has the action and resources basically together inside one single policy for the operations we did. So of course, the duplicated, you will not have 20 send messages here if your application does a lot of send messages called, but every basically permission you require is of course only in there once. And then we also have a resource-based policy for our test queue, where we can see here that this is the permission which is necessary for the subscription, and it doesn't matter how often the subscription is basically used and how often there are messages published. You will of course only have one of the policies. And for bigger stacks, this also translates. So you can have multiple roles here then, and multiple resource-based policies depending on what you're doing. Same thing for stuff like cross account or something. And we'll have the resource-based policy in the target account, and the identity-based policy in the source account generated for you to basically provide an overview of all the permissions needed. Of course, this requires some kind of test suite or whatever executed against your stack, so we can the calls which should basically generate these policies also have to be executed, right? So running your integration test suite or something against LocalStack, which imitates user behavior, will then result in these policy summaries, as we call them.
That's amazing. Thank you, Daniel. So can you tell us more about the flags enforce IAM and IAM soft mode?
So yes, gladly. Enforce IAM equals 1 if set when starting LocalStack will enable policy enforcement on LocalStack. So basically, if you run some call and you do not have the appropriate permission, the call will be denied. And the IAM soft mode uses the same policy enforcement engine we are using in LocalStack, but it will not actually deny it. It will only basically output it in a policy stream like here, and it will also show log entry if it would have log entries in the LocalStack logs. If the request would have been denied, so you can basically debug your policies while your application or your tests run uninterrupted, and it will afterwards show you in the logs which actions were denied, and you can amend your policies and your permission sets to incorporate the appropriate permissions.
That's great. So Daniel, do you have any best practices in your mind which people should follow while using this feature?
Yes, the policy stream feature is designed to show you the policies for each individual request, which can get very verbose if you have a big stack and a big application running with many requests, right? So these are best used in a smaller setting where you try out new services, or you want to know what permission is or what policy is necessary for a particular request. For bigger applications, we would basically suggest that you deploy your application as is, and then we have in our policy stream window here, we can reset it, right? And then the policy summary is empty again, so it doesn't basically show you the policies necessary for deploying your application, which might be less interesting to you, but only the policies necessary to run the application. And then you can execute your integration test suite against LocalStack. And you can see here in the summary policy all the permissions necessary to actually run your application in production, and you're not basically and the summary is not polluted by the permissions you need only for deploying your application. So basically deploy your application, reset the summary by this with this button here, and then run your integration test and see a generated summary here.
Awesome. And what would be there in future roadmap? Because this looks really exciting, and we would love to know what would be there in the future roadmap, Daniel.
So in the future, we have some things planned. For example, only showing the policies and the requests which would have been denied, also in the web app here. So you can basically see only your missing permissions and have also the policies generated for them. And also basically the exact opposite of that, you deploy it with your production permissions, run the tests, and basically this feature will tell you what permissions were never used while your test suite was running. So you can see either that the integration test doesn't test a certain feature you have, right? Or that you have too many permissions defined and could reduce them to have minimal permissions on all your services.
Awesome. Then that's the end. Thank you so much, Daniel, for coming up today. And thank you, everyone, for watching the video. I hope you liked the video. And if you have any questions for Daniel, for me, or for the community, so you can always ask us in our Slack community, which is slack.localstack.cloud. Thank you, everyone.